the first Davis wing on it.
That's correct.
Okay, just walk me through this aircraft a little bit.
Okay. After consolidated with the PBY and PB2Y3, this was going to be a commercial version of a flying boat. And it varied quite a bit from the previous two models. One, a Davis new aerodynamic wing was put on the airplane, and a twin tail, vertical tail, was added to it also. It had 3350 engines, those were experimental, and instead of a square wingtip, as you can see, it was a rounded type wingtip. The floats retracted up inboard, as you can see them here, and it was a pretty fast airplane for its time also. That Davis wing then, this airplane I believe originally flew in July of '39.
Okay.
The wing then was used for the first XB-24, which flew in December. The wing and the tail was essentially put on the XB-24.
Okay, and on the XB-24, it was designed for a four-engine.
Four-engine, yes, correct.
Okay.
And it had different engines. This had 3350s right engine. The B-24 has 1830 P&W engines.
Okay. Okay. So this was an experimental. This was
And yes,
a little bit larger engine then, right?
Yep, it was a larger engine, and it did not get into production. There was only one built, the war coming along and so forth, so it never did get in production.
Okay. Okay, now this is the final production B-24.
Well, not final production, you might call it as one of the initial production because it doesn't have nose turret and all that, but
yeah, but this was the production model
of a B-24.
of a B-24.
Has a Davis wing like that Model 31. You can see the twin tails the same, and with this airplane, I believe it's a D airplane. It hasn't had the nose turret added to it, or ball turret, aft turret, and so forth.
Now, when did they add the nose turret and the ball turret? About.
I don't know. I believe it was the E or F models that, because the variation of them.
This particular model was like the first 20 that were built to go to England.
No, the LB-30 type deal really didn't kind of you might say, just had, if I remember right, didn't have the top turret, had the waist guns and a tail gun, and then wiggler gun in the nose.
Okay.
But it did not have a turret on top.
Did not have a turret on top. Mm-hmm.
And those were called LB-30s because they were not supercharged engines, and less armament also.
Okay. Okay. Now this actually, they built Consolidated Vault-T totally. Do you recall how many of these aircraft they built? I know they built 3,800 of them at this plant.
Grand Prairie and Willow Run.
Willow Run was the other place, yeah. So there's over 38,000 built.
18,000.
18,000, excuse me.
Not 13,000.
Yeah. And there's only two actually flying now. The one, Diamond Lil, which is an LB-30, and then the America, which is a combination of several aircraft, I believe.
I understand, that's true.
There is, Diamond Lil is the only continuous flying B-20, well, LB-30 or B-24 since production. Now this is the Navy version.
This is the Navy version of the B-24. They call it PB4Y2, and you can see it came a single tail, had remote turret blisters on each side, power turret in the nose, and essentially the same engine. But you notice two turrets, upper turrets, and so forth. And I'm not sure if I have the number how many of those were built or not.
Were they all built here? Were they built
those
throughout?
were all built in San Diego.
These were all built in San Diego. Okay.
Fort Worth Division built the 24s and C-87s.
Okay.
They did not get into any of the Navy aircraft,
Okay,
any of the boats or the land plane.
okay. Okay, now this was the B-32.
Yep.
This is the XB-32.
3 of these were built in San Diego. There was a production contract allocated in, I believe, 41 or 42 for a larger bomber than the B-24 or the B-17. Boeing built the B-29 when we started in with the B-32. The XB, as you can see, is twin tail. The fuselage was pressurized, remote guns, retractable turrets, and so forth. Out of the 3, one of them was destroyed on one of the test flights. We changed configuration then from the twin tail to the single tail on the 3rd XB-32. You can see one of the dummy turrets now, instead of the remote deal, was a fixed turret put on it, and still pressurized and so forth. Then the specification was changed again for the production model that was not required to be pressurized, did not have remote turrets and so forth. And this became then the so-called production B-32. These were all made in Fort Worth. Some of them did see, I believe it was 18, went to the Pacific and did see the last combat action against Japan, made the last really offensive flight against Japan.
Yeah, this aircraft was, I think, was the last aircraft to do a bombing run on Japan?
Yes, I understand.
Okay, now this is this is during, this is 1946. This was
Yeah.
our first flight of the first super bomber that, but actually was designed in the early 40s because we thought England was gonna lose the war, and we needed an aircraft to be able to fly from the United States to Germany and back without refueling.
That is correct.
So this was the one that was designed on the drawing boards, but did not have its first flight until August 8th of 1946.
That is correct.
Go ahead and tell me a little bit about this aircraft.
This airplane, again, production will vary slightly from this photograph, but not very much. The wing, the engine configuration remains the same, tail and so forth. You can see the blisters in the back were for the remote gunners to operate the remote turrets that were retracted inside the fuselage. Forward had remote turrets also with a blister on the side. Production airplanes you see later on will have a bubble canopy instead of a smooth contour as the XB has. Even later in the production program, they added then 4 jet engines, 2 on each side, to increase its speed and also altitude capability.
Now, on this particular flight, you flew the first. You were the engineer,
Flight engineer.
flight engineer
Yes.
on this first flight. Now, where was your position on this aircraft at the time?
Flight engineer's station varied from this time is down here behind the pilot, co-pilot, down the lower deck. We had about 6 panels, and there were 2 flight engineers, really. Bill Easley and myself. And all the test instrumentation for it, as well as the main engine instrumentation, auxiliary power unit, fuel system monitoring, electrical system monitoring. That was all the flight engineer's responsibility.
Now, this was a fairly hot day, and you didn't have any air going through there, did you?
No, it was not air conditioned. It was warm. The flight took place about 10:30 in the morning and lasted about 38 minutes, and uneventful in a way, you might say. We got it back down. One thing we did have was fabric flaps and so forth, which was changed then to metal flaps later on.
Okay. Now, the engines did get a little hot on this flight, didn't they?
Well, we went through, this was what we call the corn cob engine. It was a 28-cylinder engine made by Pratt & Whitney, and 4 rows, 7 banks. And these were so-called Dash 25s. Eventually, we went through, the final production had a Dash 53 engine, which had fuel injection and better baffling for better cooling.
Okay. Now, is this not the final production, this is a production.
This is the D airplane, number 54, and I believe that was the first airplane we put the jet pods on,
Okay.
as a matter of fact. And you can see, again, from the XB, the bubble canopy, which was on all airplanes, includes the YB, jet engines added, and otherwise it stayed about the same. The later H models and so forth, we did add extra fuel in the outer panels. Otherwise, the fuel was inboard from the outer panels.
Now, this aircraft could hold, what, 132 bombs in her bomb bay?
Right, and we also carried then 2 of the 42,000-pound bombs, which the bomb bay then was changed. Initially, it had 4 bomb bays with the doors retracting up the side, similar to the B-24. Then we put quick action doors that encompass both, made it only 2 bays. 1 and 2 is 1, 3, and 4 is the second one. That way we could accommodate the larger bomb.
Okay. They went to a nuclear bomb then? Okay. Now, this kind of just shows the size between the B-29 and a...
Yeah, this is a comparison as we rolled out the XB 36 out. We decided to get a B-29 off from Carswell across the field to show the size of the airplane increased.
Now, this is, of course, the first production, and now in the final...
This is the
Our
XB.
first XB, yeah.
Yeah.
In the final production, the aircraft stayed, the actual length and width was the same.
That's correct.
They just changed the bubble canopy and,
Added jet engines. We changed the bomb bay configuration, like I said, changed it from 4 to 2 with the larger retract doors. We put Dash 53 engines in them on the recips and so forth.
now this aircraft then was,
And we also, naturally, the big thing, from the single gear, we went to the so-called track gear
Right.
type, not track gear, but 4 bogey type main gear.
right. Now this, actually, the Air Force received their first aircraft, when, about 1948?
I thought it was 40, latter part of 47.
47, okay.
Yes.
Latter part of 47, and then it flew until 1958, and it was called the Peacemaker, because it never dropped a bomb in anger, but it kept the Russians at bay, and did its job, really, until the B-52 came along, and it was replaced by the B-52, the B-58.
Yep.
But the B-52 had to have a KC-135 with it. This aircraft could fly 10,000 miles.
That was the specification, fly